Just raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give to the court and the jury in the matter now pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I'm sorry, God with them.
Okay. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you shall give to the court in the matter now in hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
And if it's at all helpful, that microphone before you is adjustable. You can put it in any direction you wish. Just try to keep your voice up. Okay, sir?
Thank you.
Now, sir, could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Yes, it's Ian Whiffin. So IANWHIFFIN.
And what is it that you do for work, sir?
I'm currently the decoding product manager at CELLBRITE.
And what is CELLBRITE?
CELLBRITE is one of the world leaders in mobile forensics software.
And when you say forensic software, can you explain to the jury a little bit about sort of what is forensic software and how is it used, specifically your CELLBRITE?
Yes, so forensic software is used to gain access to people's devices, cell phones primarily, to extract that data and to allow examiners to parse and decode that data to make sense of it in a more user-friendly way so that a report can be created for investigators.
Now, sir, if I could ask you just a few questions going back to some of your educational and prior work experience with starting sort of with your undergraduate work, what, if any, where did you go to school and what, if any, degree did you receive then?
Okay, I didn't get a degree. I'm originally from the UK, where I did qualifications in computing, a higher national certificate in computing, and then joined the police in 2004.
And what department was that, sir?
That was response work. So South Yorkshire Police as a response officer.
And where did you go from there?
In 2009, I immigrated to Canada, where I was able to continue policing with the Calgary Police Service, where I spent approximately 4 or 5 years, again, working patrol before moving to the digital forensics team of Calgary Police.
And with respect to moving to that digital forensics team, what, if any, specialized training did you receive in regard to that area?
So once I had made it into the digital forensics, I was sent to Ottawa for 3 weeks to do a foundational computer forensics course, covering all manner of digital forensics to begin with. Throughout my 8 years with Calgary Police, I did constant courses each year to keep information updated, including a 2-week course, again, at the Canadian Police College in Ottawa, specifically about cell phone forensics. And then also during that time, additional courses for extracting data for interpreting internet artifacts or any other kind of information found on a phone or computer.
And following that, where did you go from there, sir?
In 2020, I left Calgary Police Service and began working at CELLBRITE as the senior digital intelligence expert, where I would use my knowledge of the forensic community to assist the developers with creating and maintaining a program that examiners would want to use. And finally, about 2 years ago, I moved to the decoding product manager position.
And can you explain to the jury sort of what it is, what your role is, and what is it that you do for CELLBRITE?
Yep, so right now in the position I'm in, again, I use my knowledge of the digital forensics landscape in the community. I talk with users about their daily challenges, what applications are causing them problems, what they need to get access to, what they need to understand. And I take that information, create a priority list, and then determine with our developers what we will tackle, how we will tackle it, and how it will appear to the end user.
Now, with regard to your education in this area, what, if any, certifications do you have?
No specific certifications. I've done the CELLBRITE coursework since joining CELLBRITE, but other than the 3-week course in Ottawa, and then again the 2-week course in Ottawa, I don't have the SANS training or any of that kind of training certifications.
And in addition to your work with CELLBRITE, what, if any, other areas of the field have you worked?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
Sure. Have you given any presentations? Have you published any work in relation to this area?
Yes. So since working as an examiner, I identified that there were times that I needed to parse artifacts from applications that the main vendors didn't support. In response to that, I would do my own research. That research turned into a selection of digital forensics tools, and I created a website for myself to share that research, to share those tools with the community. And directly related to that, I have published articles related to accessing data on phones, related to SQL databases, related to various other artifacts, primarily locations.
Now, over the course of your work, have you had occasion to testify in other courts in relation to this specific field?
Yes, related to digital forensics, I've testified approximately 20 times, mainly in Canada, but also once in Michigan, once in Australia, once in the UK.
Now, as far as questions that come into your company with relation to interpretation of data, other sort of general forensic questions, what parts of the world do these questions come in from, and how widely used is your product?
So the product is used globally. There are a select number of countries that we don't export to, but generally, if a police service is interested in digital forensics, then they're using at least some of our tools. We operate an email address which is open to any user called Stumpers. And the idea is that users, if they come across an artifact that they can't explain, they can email to myself and some of my colleagues, and we can research that artifact, and we can try and give them an answer as to say why the artifact's there and how it should be interpreted.
You used the term in there as far as an artifact. If you could please explain to the jury sort of what your understanding of that term is and how it's used within your specific industry.
Yeah, so I would refer to an artifact as essentially any piece of data which I've recovered from the phone, which is of interest. It could be a web history visit. It could be a text message. It could be a photograph, any piece of information.
Now, sir, turning your attention to September of 2023, at some point in that month, were you contacted by the Norfolk District Attorney's Office and the State Police in regard to this case?
Eventually, yes. Initially, I was contacted by a member of CELLBRITE.
And if you know why was that initial, as far as the initial contact or initial request from CELLBRITE, can you speak about that?
My understanding was there was an artifact found on a device, and people were looking for an explanation as to how this particular timestamp was relevant to the case.
Now, if you could explain to the jury sort of what you, what were you provided and what were you asked to look at?
So the original question is just basically how can we explain this 227 timestamp? I spoke to my colleague and requested if he could contact the investigators and any information that they could share about where this particular timestamp was found so that I could investigate it. I was advised at that time that the case had already been uploaded to our own support network. So the full extraction of the device in question was already in CELLBRITE's possession. And I was able to access it from there and start to examine what the issue was that was causing the confusion.
Now, with reference to this issue, can you describe to the jury, just in general terms, sort of what this issue was?
Yes, so the issue, as I was led to believe, is there was a timestamp for a web history artifact of 2:27 and 40 seconds AM local time, which would be UTC-5, and it didn't make sense to the investigators. And the question was, is there any other interpretation for what this timestamp could mean?
And so essentially you were asked to explain the timestamp and how it came to be, correct?
Correct.
And as far as this particular issue, has this arisen in other instances? Have you been asked the same question or similar questions in regard to this type of artifact?
Yeah, several weeks later, so probably around December time last year, I was contacted by a police investigator in Austria with a very similar question, but related to obviously a different internet search. And about a week later, the defense expert in the same case also contacted me asking the same question. The defense expert in that case was able to provide the database, and I was able to provide the answer.
Now, as far as the full extraction, is that the entirety of what you looked at in this instance, or what, if anything else, were you provided with in regard to your review and your analysis in this case?
So I did work with the full extraction, but my interest was focused on just the web history artifacts.
And what, if anything, did you find with regard to the web history artifact?
So the 22740 timestamp was correct insofar as that is the time that is shown within the database. It was indeed a deleted record, but the interesting thing was why the timestamp said 22740. And I did some testing on this and discovered the reason why 22740 was actually listed in the database, even though that's not the time, in my opinion, that the search was conducted.
And what is your opinion as to when the search was conducted?
There's plenty of other evidence on that extraction that shows what activity was occurring at 227 40 seconds. And there's plenty of evidence later on in the day that shows that that particular search was conducted at 6:23, I believe 51 seconds, and then a similar search at 6:24 and 18 seconds, I believe.
And before we get to that, Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Whiffin, I'm showing you the document. Ask you to take a look at
Thank
that.
you.
Look up on your phone.
Yes,
Do you recognize that, sir?
I do, yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
This was the internet history, the history.db database table showing activity from the morning of the 29th of January 2022.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Commonwealth seeks to introduce and witness the next exhibit. No objection.
Okay.
6:14.
Your Honor, may I return to the witness?
Yes.
Your Honor, if I may, with the court's permission to republish it in the jury.
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach this to retrieve?
Yes.
No, that's my fault.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Whiffin, do you recognize what's up on the screen now as the exhibit you have before you?
I do, yes.
And Mr. Whiffin, there should be a laser pointer on the desk next to you. What I'm going to ask you to do is, if you could, using that laser pointer, explain to the jury what we're looking at in this exhibit and what, if anything, of significance you observe within this exhibit.
Okay, of course. So this was a table I created based on the data from the phone. The first column shows the local time of a record that was written to the history database. This is a database which is tracking all web pages which are loaded as you use them. The second column starts with the URL, so the Uniform Resource Locator, so what you would type in or how the browser knows which website you want to visit. The title is part of the website which is loaded. One of the top attributes of the website will load the title. Visit count relates to an internal counter within Safari, which just tracks how many times a particular website is visited in order to make suggestions to you down the road. And then finally, the last column shows the source of this information. So history.db is the name of the database. History_visits is the name of the table. And then the number is the unique identifier, which is assigned to that particular record in consecutive order. So every time you add a new record, that number will increase by 1.
Hey, Mr. Whiffen, probably a couple of foundational questions that I should have asked you first. My apologies. With respect to the cell phone extraction that you were provided, that was from a individual named Jennifer McCabe, is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And fair to say you don't know Jennifer McCabe, never met her, don't know anything about her?
Correct.
And as far as a extraction is concerned, if you could please explain to the jury sort of what your understanding of that is. What is an extraction?
An extraction in this case, all of the files and folders had been extracted from the device, saved on a computer in a zip file container. So essentially in a way that is as close to the original from the device as possible.
And again, what is your title specifically with CELLBRITE?
It's Decoding Product Manager at the moment.
And so what, if any, relation does what you do have with relation to an extraction, and how that's, what's sort of the relationship between what you do and a CELLBRITE extraction?
Okay. So once the extraction's been extracted and we have the zip file, then Physical Analyzer is the tool that CELLBRITE creates to allow examiners to look at that extracted data in a meaningful way. And my role is somewhat shaping how examiners will see that data when they open up Physical Analyzer and look at the extracted data.
And how does your role play into that? What is it that you do that what, if any, relationship does what you do have to do with how examiners will view something from a CELLBRITE tool?
Again, so after being an examiner for 10 or 11 years, I've got that kind of understanding of how examiners work. Being someone who also writes my own software and does my own research, then I can kind of cross that void that usually exists between developers and examiners and help both parties try to come to a meaningful conclusion.
Ms. Gilman, if you could shrink that just a little, or zoom out a little. Now, again, Mr. Whiffen, if you could, using that laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, is significant you observed depicted in this particular case.
Yes, so the lower two records, which are highlighted in green, are two records which occurred at 2:27 and 42 seconds local time. So 2 seconds after the Google search had allegedly been made. And then the second record is 5 seconds after that at 2:27, 47 seconds. Both those URLs relate to a website of hokamocksports.com.
Now, if you could explain to the jury, what is a contiguous identifier?
So again, every SQLite database will assign a unique contiguous identifier number. So again, the very first record created will be given a record ID of 1. The second record will be 2, and so on and so forth. Those numbers are never reused. So if I was to delete record 3, that record number will never be reused, and I can see that there's a gap and deleted data in that database.
You used another term in there as far as a SQLite database. If you could explain to the jury what your understanding of that term is based on your training experience.
Yeah, a SQLite database, essentially, it's a series of tables. It's a way for data to be stored, again, in a meaningful, organized fashion that can be queried, can be examined, can be filtered, searched, etc. It can be useful for anybody who wants to get data from an organized file.
Now, with reference to the searches that you observed within this particular web history, what, if any, relationship did the contiguous identifiers, sort of the range, what if anything, did that tell you?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that?
What, if any, observations did you make as far as those contiguous identifiers in the range they had in relation to the web history that you observed?
Okay, so within the history.db file, there were no missing numbers from the beginning of January, essentially, until early February. That told me as an examiner that no records have been deleted during that time.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
So if I could ask.
That one back.
Everyone
Thank you.
recognize that, sir?
I do, yes.
What do you recognize that to?
This is the browser state record, which identified a search at 2:27:40 a.m.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Almost. We have no objection.
Okay. Thank you.
May I return to the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
For permission, may we publish it to the jury?
Yes.
Now, sir, directing your attention to the screen, is that what you have before you as the next exhibit?
It is, yes.
And if you could explain to the jury what we're looking at in this exhibit and what, if any, information you're able to sort of glean as a forensic examiner with relation.
Okay. So this is a searched item exhibit. It's technically a derivative of a different exhibit that we find on the device. So we found what we consider a web history record. So a web history record would just mean we have a URL that was visited and potentially a timestamp and a title. Searched items looks at all of the web history items that we've found and tries to identify were these actually searches that were conducted. So for example, if you were to do a search on Google, you'd see that the website that you're taken to is google.com query, and then it contains the query string that you've typed in. We extract that information, we extract that query and provide it to the user as a searched item. In this case, I can see that it came from the browser state.db WAL file. The search query itself was host long to dying cold, and it shows as a deleted record.
Now, with respect, I think you've used a couple of different terms within that as far as a knowledge C database. Can you explain to the jury what that is?
I don't recall saying knowledge C, but I can explain what knowledge C is in this case.
If you could, please.
Yes, the knowledge C database is at the heart of iOS. It stores lots of information about the activity on the device at any given time. Things like when the backlight's turned on, when the device is unlocked, what application is in focus at the time and how long it's in focus for. And important to this case, which website's on screen at any given time as well.
Now, when you say when a website is in focus, can you expound upon that as far as what exactly do you mean by when you say in focus?
So in terms of iOS itself, when it's in focus, it would be the primary item that's visible on screen. So with iOS, you can have applications in the background that you aren't using, but the one that you are currently using is considered in focus, taking up the entire screen.
I believe you had used the term as far as a browser state DB, is that correct?
Correct.
And can you explain to the jury what your understanding of that term is and how it relates to it?
Browser state DB is just the name of the database, the name that Apple gave it. It's gone through some changes over the last few years. For example, in iOS 14, it did store the state of the tabs that were open within a browser. In iOS 15, there was a significant change, and the only time that records were written to the database is when the tab was closed. So a significant difference in that it doesn't show you what's currently open, it only shows you what's previously been closed.
Now, this search here, what, if anything, did you observe as far as this record in relation to the history DB related to the search?
This record is not mentioned at all within the history.db database.
And what, if any, missing records from this time frame did you observe either?
There were no missing records in the history.db database. Within this time frame, within the browser state database, there were 3 deleted records.
When you say deleted records, as far as your CELLBRITE tool is concerned, what exactly does deleted mean?
These are records that have been deleted, not necessarily by the user, potentially by the system, but they are considered deleted records that we're able to recover.
What are some of the ways that something might be deleted by the system, and which are you talking about, the phone, or are you talking about your tool?
The phone. Our tool is designed as a forensic tool. It's not going to edit, delete, or affect the data in any way, just present what is in the extraction. But there are multiple times on an iOS device or an Android device where cleanup essentially happens, and we start to lose data after a certain amount of time.
Now, with respect, let me just ask this for a moment. With respect to CELLBRITE, as far as the tools, have there been a variety of different versions of those tools as far as conducting that forensic extraction?
Yes. So CELLBRITE Physical Analyzer has been available for approximately 12, 13 years in various versions.
And what, if any, differences are there between, in general terms, between, say, an older version versus a newer version?
Obviously, in the digital forensics landscape, whenever a provider creates a new feature, we have to change our code to adapt to what they've now introduced. There can be research that's been done, so we now learn new things, and we add support over time. So something can be supported in this new version of Physical Analyzer that may not have been supported or even existed in a previous version.
Now, with respect to your work in this field, what, if any, tools have you designed or created or something to conduct this type of work?
Aside from Physical Analyzer?
Yes.
Okay, so I have my own tool called Artex, which I've been working on for around 5 years, since being an examiner myself and struggling to parse any particular application that I needed. So I started to write my own tools, and that's the one that is one that I still maintain on the side in my own time, partly for my own knowledge, but partly because I think it still introduces some fantastic features which aren't available in any other tool for research purposes. So yeah, I continue to write this tool to this day.
And could you just say the name of the tool?
Artex, A-R-T-E-X.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, with regard to the situation depicted in the exhibit up on the screen, what are some of the reasons why this may occur, or why this may read as it does?
Sorry, is it deleted?
Yes.
Oh, the record itself has been deleted. As I said, the reason why it's deleted, through my testing, I've only found 2 ways that kind of record can be deleted by the user. And I don't believe either of those ways was actually utilized on this device.
And what are those 2 ways?
The user has the option to selectively delete history items. So you can delete either one at a time, or the entire day's content, or the last 2 days' content. Or you can delete all content altogether. Now, if all content had been deleted, we wouldn't have found any information on this phone at all related to web history, so I was able to discount that one quite quickly.
And I guess alluding to what you had just said, why is it that you don't believe that either of those 2 methods of user deletion occurred in this context?
Objection, may we approach, please?
I'm sorry?
I said objection, may we approach, please?
Okay.
Did.
May I have one moment, Your Honor?
Sure.
Mr. Whiffen, moving on from that for a moment, may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
That document I've just handed you, Mr. Whiffen, do you recognize that?
I do, yes.
And what do you recognize that to?
It's a document that highlights both the search terms that were found in mobile safari.plist and the method of searching.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Commonwealth will seek to introduce the witness in next exhibit. No objection.
Okay. Thank you.
May I return to the witness? Yes. Of course, Mr. May we publish it to the jury?
Okay.
And Mr. Whiffen, do you recognize what's up on the screen as the next exhibit?
I do, yes.
You did use a term in there, I believe, called the P list. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you explain to the jury what you understand that term to mean and how it relates to what you're about to talk about up on the screen?
Yes, so a P list or a property list is Apple's way of storing serialized data. That essentially means a list of data with names and values.
And, sir, if you could, again, using that later point, direct the jury's attention to explain sort of what we're looking at and what, if anything, is significant to observe in this particular slide or tape.
Yeah, so again, this is a table I created from the data within the mobile safari.plist. The term shown down the left is what the user would have typed in to the search bar. Sorry, I keep blinding somebody. The search bar in the bottom of the Safari browser window. The UTC time is the time which is actually recorded within the plist. It's recorded as a string, so just text as it's presented on the screen there. And then I converted that and subtracted 5 hours to bring it into local time around Canton.
Now, aside from this, just for a moment, with regard to, are you familiar with what's termed as a private browsing mode?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what that is and how it relates to this?
Yeah, so private browsing mode is a setting that you can set on iOS devices or primarily most devices that prevents any of your browsing activity being recorded. So that it won't save the searches, it won't save the navigations, it protects everything so that it can't be found later on.
And what, if any, relation did that have to what your analysis of the extraction in this case?
If these searches had been conducted while in private browsing mode, these searches would not exist within this file.
So is it your opinion that they were not conducted in any kind of private browsing mode?
Correct.
Now, you also familiar with the term as far as failure to load?
Yes.
Can you explain that to the jury and how that applies to this?
Yes, so obviously whenever you try to visit a web page, there's a stream of information coming from the web to the device, which then renders onto the screen. At the completion of the load event, there's a function effectively which runs, and that records the visit to the history database. If for some reason the page doesn't load and it shows up with an unable to load message, So for example, you don't have an internet connection at all, that unable to load will be recorded. If, however, the device stalls and it just sits kind of waiting to load, nothing gets written to the history database. And if you were to close the browsing window prior to the page completing its load event, nothing will be written to history.
Would that be written to somewhere else within the phone as far as any other storage areas?
Technically, the only place I found would be the browser state.
Now, with regard to the plist files, does the plist file save all sort of history items or no?
Primarily, it's used to save preferences. So you'd have a lot of information in there if it's using light mode or dark mode, or when you want tabs to auto clear, that kind of information. But it also records several days history of searches. The actual number of days searches, I actually don't know.
And what, if any, relationship does that have with regard to the search bar that's located on the bottom of this table?
In order for the search item to be saved to the mobile Safari plist, you need to actually type into this particular search bar. If you were to just visit google.com and start typing into the Google search bar, it will not be recorded within the mobile Safari.plist.
And so what, if anything, were you able to determine about those two searches with regards to what you observed here?
So these particular two searches were conducted at 6:23:51 and 6:24:18 respectively. They were searched using the search bar that's built into Safari. The fact that they didn't exist within HistoryDB and that there were no deleted records from history.db leads me to believe that they never successfully loaded.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. That new document that I just handed you, do you recognize that?
I do, yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
This was the additional, the items from the history.db, I believe.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Commonwealth seeks to introduce and admit as the next exhibit.
Objection.
Okay. Could you bring it?
You are unmuted.
Sure. May I return to the witness?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Thank you.
Whiffen, if you could just repeat exactly what that is in the next exhibit.
Yeah, sorry, it's a comparison between the search terms found in the plist, so the mobile Safari plist, and the search terms found within the history.db database.
So the items contained within this table are items that were contained within the extraction that you examined, correct?
Correct.
And Your Honor, with court's permission, if I could display that for the jury.
Yes, yes.
And Mr. Whitman, if you could, again, using the laser pointer, just to describe to the jury what we're looking at in this table and what, if anything, is significant between sort of the two sources of information depicted here.
Okay, so the first list, the plist term, shows the term within the mobile Safari.p list, excluding the two that we've already mentioned, which are of note. And the first timestamp column shows the timestamp according to that plist. The history item shows the search term as recorded in the history database. And then we have the timestamp as per the history database. So the purpose of this document was to show that we have a search for reigning men and a history item related to the Google search for reigning men, and they show within a second of each other. Again, the next one down, Antoinette, Ock, and basketball, and the associated Google search. And again, the timestamps are within a second. This list was non-exhaustive. There was hundreds of examples within the history.db, but limited examples within the mobile Safari plist. And as I mentioned, the two searches of interest, the how long to die in the Kikdi and how long to die in the cold, didn't exist within the history.db at all.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Now, sir, if I could ask you just a little bit now about the browser state DB. Again, can you explain to the jury sort of what that is and how it, if at all, it plays a role in your analysis?
Yep. So initially, pre and including iOS 14, the browser state database would show all tabs that you currently had opened. So as soon as I go into my browser and open a new tab, a record is created. It includes information such as the time that I opened the tab or the time I last viewed the tab, the current URL which is being displayed within that tab. It shows information whether it's in private browsing mode or not. So in that kind of case, in iOS 14 and below, we're able to see current private browsing records and subsequently recover deleted ones. But in iOS 15, things changed. The record was no longer written as soon as the tab was opened. It was only opened when the tab was closed. Sorry, the record was only created when the tab was closed. That meant that our ability to recover that kind of history was significantly lower. It means that it no longer makes use of the private browsing field because now private browsing records simply are never written to that database. So now we can only really see a list of all of the tabs that have been closed, not which are currently open.
Now, with regard to the browser state DB, is there something referred to as a last viewed timestamp?
There is, yes. That's one of the fields within the database.
And can you explain specifically with relation to that field, sort of what kind of information is kept there and what it means?
Yeah, so from my research based on this, that timestamp relates to the time that the tab took focus. So that's either when the user creates the brand new tab, when they switch between tabs and bring a tab back into focus, when they close a tab, which automatically brings one of the background tabs into focus, or if Safari has been completely closed and reopened, that essentially acts like almost a new tab, and the timestamp gets updated at that point.
Can you explain how an earlier timestamp could be associated from, say, tab is open, something is done, tab is closed, tab is reopened, something else is done, how that earlier timestamp could then be associated data-wise with the subsequent search?
I think
opening of it.
I think I followed that. Okay, so if, for example, at 12 p.m., I create a new tab, I can do a search for whatever I want. And at that point, if I close the tab, then the record that gets created will show that I opened a tab at 12 p.m. and I did a search. Excuse me. However, if I open the same tab at 12 p.m., do a search, close it, like completely close down Safari and reopen Safari, that would also update the same timestamp to show that I'd opened it up again. What I meant to say at that point is that if I create a 12 o'clock tab, minimize Safari. I can leave it for several hours, for several days, for several weeks. The time difference is not really important. When I come back to it and open up Safari again from a background state, the timestamp is not updated. So it will still show 12 p.m. today, and it will show whatever my most recent navigational event is. So I can search for something in 3 weeks' time using the same tab I opened today, and the timestamp will show today's time.
All right. I think this is a good place to take our break.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Whiffen, we're going to, of course, ask you to stay with us, okay? As the jurors file up, you can file up behind us.
Thank you.
Court, all rise for the jury.
And could I see counsel regarding timing, please?